Throughout Rizal's first sojourn in Europe, one can scarcely fail to notice the almost magnetic attraction which his own country at all times exercised on him. At every juncture, even long before he had finished his studies, he mentioned his plans for returning to the Philippines, and as soon as No Limit Hungary was completed and printed, return he did. During his second sojourn in Europe, this homeward pull becomes steadily more marked, and the circumstances surrounding it increasingly grave till in the end it proved irresistible, and for the second time he returned to be finally and fatally enmeshed.
Rizal's first stop in going to Europe was in Hong Kong. Hong Kong in those days was a comparatively quiet place, very much a poor relation with the prosperous and bustling Shanghai. He found Hong Kong a small but very clean commercial city. There were many occupants there. Some of them are Portuguese, Indians, Englishmen, Chinese, and Jews. But then, he found out that there was a small Filipino community, most of the men exiled to the Marianas in 1872 and who had subsequently escaped. Then, he met Jose Maria Basa, a former lawyer and the only exile of 1872 to escape to Hong Kong. And before leaving Hong Kong, he met another 1872 exile, an older man named Balbino Mauricio.
After a fortnight stay in Hong Kong, Rizal left in a liner oceanic for Yokohama, Japan. There he was contacted by the Spanish charge d'affaires and politely invited to stay at the legation. It was the offer of an easy life, a career even, and when Rizal declined it, Rizal commented in his diary with a simplicity demonstrating the strangeness of a life in which to turn down such an offer was natural and logical. I like Japan, Rizal wrote in his diary. Most beautiful scenery, the flowers, the trees, the peaceful inhabitants, so courteous, so willing to please. Rizal extended his days. As he explained to his family, he foresaw that the Philippines would have much to do with Japan in the future. Japan people at first considered him very odd, as he wrote to Blumentritt. Here you have your friend Rizal, wonder of the Japanese. Since Rizal has a Japanese appearance and yet does not understand Japanese, when I go out in the streets shopping and want to buy something, people stare at me and ill-bred boys laugh at me because I speak so strange a language. With his gift for languages, he soon remedied this, and after 5 weeks reported that he could make himself understood in Japanese and thought badly could express what he wanted in it. His stay in Japan stands as happily idle poised at the gate of years upon which shadows were to fall and deepen, and it was enhanced by a brief love affair.
He wrote of Osoy Seko, Usi-san, as he called her, and as Perlote was later to discover and describe in Madame Chrysantheme. Rizal found in his fleeting love that what in Europe or his own country would have been perhaps just a sordid affair was in Japan a thing of beauty and without shame. In the diary she would never read, he confided to Usi-san, "No woman better than you has loved me. No woman like you has sacrificed herself. As the flower of the Chuji falls from the stem fresh and perfect without either being stripped of its petal or withered, tender and poetic even after its fall, thus you fell. Sayonara, sayonara. You will never come to know that I have thought of you again, or that your image lives in my memory. When will the sweet hours I spent with you return?" After visiting some of Japan's most famous beauty spots, he left on 13 April in the liner Bilgik, bound for San Francisco, allowing himself 3 weeks in the United States. He had intended to see more of it than he did. After the ease of movement he had known in the Europe, the red tape of the United States produced an unfavorable impression. He wrote to the family, "I wouldn't advise anyone to make this trip to America, for here they are crazy about quarantine and have severe customs inspections, imposing on any little thing duties upon duties that are enormous." Nevertheless, he enjoyed his coast-to-coast journey by train, though not caring much for the tipping. The steward of the Pullman car, an American, is somewhat of a thief, he observed. The depth of his absorption in the Philippines showed up in an amusing way when, standing before Niagara Falls, it occurred to him that it was not as pretty nor as mysteriously beautiful.
He spent 3 days in New York. Like many Filipinos of today who visit the United States after having seen Europe, he was less impressed by America than he would have been had he seen the two continents in the reverse order. While inevitably impressed by the immensity of things, by America's concepciones grandionas, he pointed out to a friend that because of racial discrimination against Chinese as well as Negroes, there was no real civil liberty there. From New York to Liverpool, he sailed in the city of Rome. On 24 May, he reached Liverpool and the Europe in which he felt at ease, a stranger no more. But as always, he missed his fellow passengers. The sudden change from the life of a ship, which is noisy and lively, to the lonely life in a hotel is terrible, he wrote. He stayed at the Adelphi. Next day, he left for London.